AskReddit by Broadway 96. What's a company secret you can share now that you don't work there? Health insurance dude. When you file a claim, it is often denied because they are counting on you not escalating it. Once you do, your case goes to a medical management group which ought to be called the We Don't Wanna Pay group. Keep escalating and involve your doctor. Fight for the insurance you paid for. Can confirm busted my knee. Was on crutches BC I couldn't walk on it was denied BC they felt I wasn't in enough pain BC I didn't require a painkiller prescription DR went back and forth and I was on crutches 2 months before they finally relented and I could get my surgery. Mortgage industry here, we're like cops, only answer the question asked, do not provide additional information to be helpful, it could screw you over. What are examples that screw people over? Oprah Winfrey had us edit our models in post-production. I fucking love this one. I worked at L'Oreal. The cosmetics from L'Oreal and Lancome are practically the same. But Lancome costs like $20 more. I worked at Olive Garden in the mid-90s while I was in college. Back then, they had the all-you-can-eat soup, salad and breadsticks lunch special for like $4.25 plus tax. Working lunch shift sucked. You would get probably 2 or 3 tables, and there was a 99% chance that all of your tables were to ladies getting this lunch special with water during their lunch break. After about a year, several of our best servers were mysteriously fired. It turns out, they were running a scam where they used the same receipt over and over again when these ladies paid for their meal with cash. Since we could get those 3 items ourselves from the back without bringing them into the system, these servers were just pocketing the cash for the entire meal. So instead of making like $5 $8 in tips during a lunch shift like the rest of us dumb schmucks, they would make an extra $20 or so by stealing from the company. Server at Earl's in downtown Vancouver did something similar. Servers used to have the ability to move items to other bill seats tables if they rang that item to the wrong place. A server moved a 3.00 pop repeatedly every time somebody paid cash. By the time she was caught after many years, she had stolen about $15K apparently. T-Mobile has 2 coverage maps. The one they show customers and the real one that is internal shows the actual coverage. Diminishes by about 50%. Their coverage is built on a bed of lies. I used to work in college admissions. Rich donors, athletes, and other VIPs have lower admission criteria. They still have minimums, but they're super easy to reach, even for a selective university. In the case of the university I worked for, children of general church authorities also got this. That's little surprise to me. Explains why George W. Bush got into Yale with a ho-hum 1,200 on his sats when typical students without a president of the CIA father needed a 1,500. Dart Sprite and Sprite Zero were the exact same thing. They didn't change the recipe one bit. They just changed the name and design. I've always assumed this, but it's nice to get confirmation. This Mormon church likes to talk about how much charity they do, but it's always tied to some form of missionary work or proselytizing. Particularly in UT, they would secure housing, furniture, food etc. to Iraqi refugees, and in exchange, these poor people who have had their whole life uprooted would have to be visited by and listen to missionaries drone on and on about the Mormon religion. And having the gall to ask these Muslim refugees if they want to get baptized after a few weeks. I know this because I, non-Mormon, was dating a Mormon girl back then, and I was asked to translate for the Iraqi families. I speak Arabic. Of course I never did. I told them the whole scam, and told the Iraqis to act interested so they can keep getting charity. We scammed the scammers basically lol. I worked at a comic book store that offered a service where you paid a small premium to have sent in rare comics to have them graded at CGC. A few months later we had many customers coming in to check the status of their comics. We contacted the owner to see what was going on, and he would always claim that there was some distribution problem. Fast forward a few months, we found out he was taking customers' graded copies and selling them online while trying to return back issue versions of their original comics. How did this dude think that comic collectors who were sending in comics to be graded wouldn't recognize they weren't receiving their original comic back? Lol. I'm sure a few newer to the hobby wouldn't be the wiser, but man. I worked for a major hotel chain in housekeeping for over 10 years. The number of suicides and people who die naturally in their rooms is a lot higher than you'd think. I worked at a huge convention hotel with over 1,000 rooms and it happened quite often. Unless it was a pretty gnarly mess, it would just get cleaned like normal and the next guest had no idea. At one of the hotels I worked at, a woman killed herself by drinking antifreeze. Her body was blue, blood, vomit, and damp, poop everywhere. My friend who was maintenance saw it and damp, couldn't sleep that night. Working at hotels will change you. 1 gallon of milk, 1 full bottle of Monin vanilla syrup and 0.6 of a pound of espresso brewed. Now freeze it. Boom. Joe Muggs frozen cappuccino. I read that as 1 full bottle of Martrin and was very concerned. Had a friend who worked for a bridal dress company. She would tell me all her stories after work. They intentionally will bring back the wrong dress in attempts to get you to try it on, fall in love, and buy a more expensive wedding dress. They'll walk you through the more expensive sections so you look through dresses out of your budget and want to try them on. They often forget to check if the dress you requested is in stock for the time frame you've requested, again so that you'll have to pay more for faster shipping or a nicer dress. It's a very predatory business masked by compliments, thinly veiled body shaming, and incredibly underpaid and understaffed stores. At a local deli grocery store I worked at, everyone raved about how good their mac and cheese is, and it always sold really quick when I worked in the deli. It's even labeled on the menu as, store's famous mac and cheese. It's literally just Stuffers, we didn't even add anything to it. To be fair, Stuffers is the shit. If you pick up a wall phone at Home Depot and push 7 it activates the store-wide intercom. This works in every store in my province of fake. Pound symbol then 35 at Lowe's. Worked at a American Toyota dealership in the body shop for 12 years. We would throw away literally everything regardless of the environmental impact. Car paint, which is nasty shit BTW, went straight to the dumpster. Radiator fluid? Down the drain. I even saw someone put oil down the drain a couple times even though we had barrels for it up in the service department. The only thing we saved was old car parts which the boss then sold to scrap yards and pocketed the money. The painter didn't ever wear a mask either. He is around 60 and still kicking despite 30 years of painting without a mask somehow. I worked at General Motors in the paint department for a while before moving to final repair. I found it that guys that wanted to commit suicide but wanted to take care of their family's future would volunteer to work in the clear coat booth. They would be seen in there with no mask on. The stuff would crystallize on their lungs. No way to save you after that. Usually took a year. 1. Ford parts from Mexico are way more reliable than Ford parts from Detroit, or at least they were before 2020. I worked in Detroit and we had some customers who were fussy about us always doing repairs with Michigan parts, but when we had a problem that wouldn't stay fixed we would always secretly switch to the Mexican parts, which did solve things. 2. I was a prison guard a decade ago and we installed some facial tracking software in the surveillance cameras. One of the inmates panicked while cleaning the unused solitary confinement cells, which is usually a desirable job. It's easy as fuck and nobody pays attention to you, and he insisted that he be moved out of that job because there was a ghost. The ranking officers decided to check the new cameras, and the security software claimed it saw a face behind the inmate at the same time as he was visibly startled in the camera footage. We're all aware there are mundane reasons why a new facial recognition system would think it saw a ghost. But since the inmate and the security software both thought there was a ghost, it was decided that the inmate should be immediately transferred at no penalty. Damn, it would suck being the one who ended up in solitary confinement in that cell, lol. I'll say it. A place similar in name to past Face Urgent Care, at least in the region I worked at, banned their front desk from informing customers that they have a credit balance to use toward their services and still required us to charge customers the full price on top of what we already owed them. Some accounts had like $500 of copay that should have been refunded but weren't. I was actually reprimanded for applying the credit balance, because despite finance agreeing my method was correct, the regional manager said it was not a good look for the company and hindered her profits. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't even understand what you're saying here and how they could be owed copay. I worked for a DR's office that owed thousands of dollars to patients. After I gathered all the info on what was owed, I was laid off. I'm talking a week after I finished the audits. I wonder if any of them were paid. I worked for a restoration company. One time an elderly woman called them to clean her house. She was a hoarder or there had been a fire. I can't remember. Anyway, the company charged $57,000 for the work to be done, but in actuality they couldn't even get the charges to add up to $20k. She couldn't file this on her insurance. There are other examples of gross overcharging, but this is the worst I know of that wasn't on the large loss side. The lesson here: if you have water, fire, mold, or hoarder damage and call in a company to clean it up, go through every line item on the invoice. Every single one. I had a mold remediation and I did go through every line item and made them explain to me the reasoning of their charges. It ended up knocking off around $3,000. Home Depot. Most security cameras are fake. Easy to steal and most stores have no security loss prevention. Buy the clearance items that end in $3. After that, the next step of the markdown process is the dumpster. Dial 676 on any desk phone to live page on the overhead speakers. Fun to mess with that. Buy the products in front. It's newer. The old product gets pushed behind continuously. If you see a reduced tag item, usually larger items, appliances, vanities, etc. slight damage, ask someone to scan for the price. Most times they are not updated and will be cheaper than the tag says. Free bottles of water for customers behind the customer service desk. I can assure you Home Depot has very real cameras and they have a lot more lost prevention than you think. Source: I was arrested from Home Depot. There's a whole section in your training about me. I still work here, but everyone please get a copy of your medical records from every place you've been to. Keep a hard copy in your home. Because I have horror stories from working in medical records since 2007. Working in a field that involves medical records, I totally agree. The number of times I've seen false diagnoses, other people's information mixed in, and assorted other crazy stuff is too high. Olive Garden breadsticks are just France brand breadsticks, garlic salt, and butter. Eater, it's margarine, not butter. I forgot there is a difference, p. Yeah, but I'm not buying France sticks when Olive Garden will give me an unlimited amount that are already prepared. In a broadband company I worked for, I was tasked with editing thousands of complaints to avoid huge Ofcom fines. That sure sounds criminal. I was the one who did an undercover news stories about Scamp's pet stores and their affiliation with puppy mills. Please don't buy from pet stores, folks. It baffles me that in the US, they sell puppies in pet stores. Here they only sell fish and rodents like rats, which is still horrible when you see how 20 goldfish are stuffed in a way too small tank. Worked at Best Buy 20 years ago. Employee discount was 5% over cost and I needed a new printer. Decided to splurge on the gold-plated USB printer cable that we sold for $40. Rang up $1.78. I worked there in high school, early college during break a bit. Definitely took advantage of accessory pricing. Other thing that was nice was the Intel and AMD employee offers where you'd get bus and motherboards for probably 50% off or better. There was a similar program for some car audio stuff too, probably close to 75% off head units, subwoofers, amplifiers, etc. I bought probably $2,000 worth for like $500 and sold it for $1,000. I used to work as a receptionist at an upscale salon. While I was there, the salon introduced a new line of products marketed towards men. Up until that point most of our products were marketed towards women, but the execs saw that we were getting more male customers. Every item in the men's product line was about half the cost of our other products. The men's shampoo was the exact same shampoo the salon had been selling for years, but because they put it in black packaging with the word man on it, it was half the price. The owner's explanation was, well, men don't want to pay that much for hair products. For the rest of the time I worked there, every time a woman came up to buy that shampoo I'd tell her that the men's shampoo was the exact same product for half the price. Which the exec was happy about, because he saw good sales for the male shampoo he introduced. I used to work surveillance at a casino. From something like 3 stories high ceiling, we could zoom in on money on the table games and read the serial numbers of the bills. We could see the pips on the dice. Policy was to not look down blouses. This is true and also very annoying because I work on the floor and the guys in surveillance can't be bothered to do their job and give us a lot of HRM and can't really see anything when we call them. All new clothing and everything you try on is dirty. I've worked in retail for years and it still shocks people, but there's no washing machine or disinfectant spray or wipes. Nothing. I've opened boxes of new clothes that had white bugs coming out of it. Seen woman after a workout class come and try clothes on then just leave still sweaty from the class. One older lady left dime-sized skin flakes in the clothes she tried on. Not to mention whatever happens when they return the item or what happened in the factory. People are gross. Nothing is clean. Always wash your clothes when you get them home. Had someone steal a new bra and put their dirty ass bra back on the rack. I threw it out. People have shit inside of fitting rooms and to this day all new clothes bought are immediately washed. Everyone looks at me and I say the day you work in retail you will understand that humans are far more disgusting than animals. When I worked at a Godiva store we would turn expired chocolate bars into sample pieces. This has to be the most benign comment in this whole thread. Maple sap can be trucked in from other states and where it's turned from sap to syrup decides on the state it comes from, not the location of the trees. You need a maple syrup cartel, like in Quebec. Used to work at a graphic design firm. All our Adobe software was pirated. From what I've heard about Adobe, if I was in that game I'd be pirating too. In the United States, one company's bread and butter was simply reboxing and relabeling computer monitors from China to make it seem like they were from the company and made assembled in some way by them. I work for a wholesaler. You would be surprised how many companies simply source merchandise and sell it without ever touching it. We ship it direct to their customers for them, just swap the return address for theirs. Your warranty service part that took 8 months actually arrived 3 weeks after they paid the invoice. They didn't even order it for 7 months. They told you it was manufacturing delays and supply chain issues, but in reality they couldn't afford to pay their bills and had to pick and choose which orders to place. You weren't a priority. They were just really bad at budgeting and damage control. I am curious if that is what happened to me. They said they would send the product when it arrived at the factory. Arrived 6 months later. They didn't even ask for the old one back or let me know that it shipped. It seemed disorganized from start to finish, and it was a name brand door lock manufacturer. We sometimes made up letters to the editor. What? How are there not enough opinionated retirees in your area? I'm 90% sure a company I worked for was importing product from China, repacking it and selling it as made in USA. i.e. blending it with the product we did make in the US. Assembled in USA is code for this, where all they do is put the made in China into a plastic bag. Worked at a major cable I span their 4 billing cycles. They upgraded the billing system, but did something wrong, and all but the current cycle got a late charge. But instead of fixing it immediately, we were told to credit their account if the customer called in. I did the math, and for the size of our city, and the 3/4 of people wrongly charged, it was over $1 million US. Most people just pay their bill and don't look to close. Edit, it was Time Warner, which was bought out a couple times in my area. Comcast. They do this all the time. Not really worth the hour plus it takes on the phone for them to not steal from you, but it's worth it to them to steal from thousands of people. Inbound call center. We are currently experiencing an unusually high call volume. Messages permanent. They just didn't staff adequately. Also, I suspect the menu options have not recently changed. I worked for a large construction company and the sales guys would intentionally omit items from contracts because they received incentives for what would then become a change order. Me, you forgot to include any framing in this contract. Sales weasel, oh, I guess it's a change order then. Customer cries. I had the opposite happen once. We were expanding our refrigerated storage building and hired an HVAC company to install the refrigeration system. They started doing a bunch of work out of scope and asked them about it. They told my boss they talked to me and I approved it 40 and amp. So no change order needed. I didn't approve anything and they tried to charge us like $500 man hour for work we didn't agree to. My boss refused to pay for the work and the guy kept threatening to sue. I worked at a candy bagging warehouse like the crappy .99 gas station candy where we would even make trail mix by hand. Tons of sweat would drip into the mix because we would be in a 100F+ room with little ventilation. Also my boss was a hunter, so a quarter of the warehouse was dedicated to his taxidermy treasure room. Fucking smelled like shit in the summer, but he was so proud of himself. Edit, also should add that if the expiration dates were bad we would use nail polish remover to take the date off. That sounds like a horror movie to me, lol. Deleted. I used to work for a company that rhymes with Musbeed and we used to have somebody post this question every few months for material for one of our clickbait articles. You made me search for ARP's history and she's full of AskReddit questions made to write clickbait articles. Oh no. Your luggage at an airport isn't really handled with care. I worked baggage at an airport. Nothing is handled with care. If it's marked fragile, your only hope is nice baggage handlers. You should avoid packing breakable things at all costs. Edit. Not totally true. I never had one, but we were trained on how to properly handle a casket. The training was be very careful, don't drop it, and for the love of God, don't sit on it like it's a horse. Truth story. That's what our boss said. Arby's manager replaced the expiration stickers on the bread with new ones. I guess so the bread would last longer that way. I threw out 100+ pittas with green fuzz on them after checking the manager's work. Yep, Subway manager used to do similar. Prepped all the veggies and meats, like way over prepped, and everything went out. Most things last 2 days. Lettuce after a couple of days becomes a slimy sludge. They basically wanted me to replace all the date marking stickers and call it a day. Not only was it horrifically bad, it was time intensive. But I wasn't having it. I discarded all of it. Bins of waste. I told the area manager. Nobody did anything, just said be quiet. Then the manager disappeared off the face of the earth, thankfully for our sakes. One of our best restaurant in my town is locally famous and everyone goes there. They say everything is homemade. The thing they are famous for is the hot beef sandwiches, with homemade potatoes and gravy, and the fish fry. The fish fry they also have during the week listed as an entree called the cod platter. It is instant Cisco brown gravy mix and instant Cisco mashed potatoes. The cod is only fresh and fried on Fridays. If you order it during the week, it is frozen breaded Cisco fish fillets or a blend of random fish shaped into a stick. So many places use something from Cisco for their secret family recipe. I was friends with the Cisco sales rep when I was a chef. The guy just couldn't understand why I did everything from scratch when every other place in town was buying entrees from him. Chuck E. Cheese isn't a real mouse. If you lived in Brandon FL from 0709, it was actually me. Sorry we never met, bud. I got banged in 2003 for charging kids tokens to get into one of the jungle gym lookout points. I figured adults couldn't get in there to catch me. It was a foolproof plan. Ice manufacturing. My shift manager dropped a 7-gram bag of weed in a bag of ice. It went out for delivery. No one ever phoned in to complain though. But did anyone phone in to thank you? The difference between the high quality deli meat sold at M&S and the regular deli meat sold in other grocery stores is that we changed the label. We would literally stop the production line, wait for the guy who ran the label machine to swap them out, and then start it back up again. I used to work for an online craft type store, and one of the things they sold was premium craft sand. It was literally sand from the hardware store. They'd buy 50-pound bags from Home Depot for $8, separate it into 1-pound bags, and sell those for $4 each. I worked as a dog groomer for a summer. We gave your dog a treat even if they weren't good. Scandalous. Everyone's favorite sauce that people wanted the recipe for was mostly mayonnaise. Sure, it was called creamy pineapple sauce, but it's just pineapple salsa and mayonnaise. Pretty much every restaurant's special sauce is mostly mayonnaise. Ice machines are disgusting inside, full of slime. But it's cold slime. So, better?